Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you joining us today for our webinar on selling Medicare over the phone. Very excited to introduce our speaker today. He has a ton of experience in sales in the Medicare business and primarily selling over the phone. Devin West is one of our top agents. He does, I want to say, all of his business working with clients remotely all over the country, does an absolutely fantastic job. And now that we're in this very strange time of COVID and coronavirus, and it looks like we will likely be having our annual enrollment period in a remote manner, I thought it was prudent to ask Devin to come in and talk to us about what that looks like to sell over the phone, to talk about how to get your clients comfortable, how to ensure trust into the presentations. He's put together a great presentation for us to do that. We'll talk a little bit about at the end about some of the technology tools that are coming, just a little sneak peek for you so that you can use those to be successful this year. Ultimately, we want you to be very successful in your AEP and yet keep your clients safe and yourself safe at the same time. So that's what we're all about today, is making sure that you get what you need. Make sure that you stick around for the Q&A at the end and ask those questions. We want to make sure you get your questions answered. But with that, Devin, thank you very much for being so gracious and lending us your time today to share your expertise in selling Medicare over the phone. I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jameson. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here and giving me the opportunity to share some insight and what I've learned over the past several years selling primarily over the phone. My goal here today is just to make sure that everyone feels at least a little bit more confident or comfortable with selling Medicare over the phone leading into AEP coming up around the corner. I will try not to bore you guys too much with my, as my wife says, my monotone Ben Stein impression, but we'll get through it. So to start off, now my thing is frozen here. Anyways, here we go. So in order to be successful, there are some things that you would need to know. As far as building trust over the phone, turning leads into clients, and most of us know how to do that already, but over the phone it's a little bit different. The enrollment methods that you can use to get people to easily enroll over the phone, and some lead generation, but a lot of it also has to do with some systems and technology that'll help you be more productive and efficient. But I've been doing this since about 2007, and initially I was with a captive brokerage, and we were told and taught that we needed to be in person every time, and we couldn't sell over the phone. That wasn't even something that was thought of, especially back in 2007. But we were only given the opportunity or taught that we could do it in person. And so there are many different reasons why people don't sell over the phone already. For us at the brokerage, because we're captive and we gave up a lot of commissions to get leads and have preset appointments made for us, we didn't need to. I also didn't know that I could. For a lot of people, you don't know that you can sell over the phone until you start researching it. And a lot of FMOs and brokerages out there will teach you that that the only way that anybody is going to buy from you is in person. And there's just no other way to do it. And part of that is compliance. There's a lot of, even with carriers up until recently, it seemed like a lot of carriers didn't want too many agents just strictly selling over the phone because they didn't have a clear interpretation of how the compliance works around that. And so that's a big thing for me as well. When I started selling over the phone in 2015 is when I left that brokerage and actually switched all my business over to agency RM here, which will now be Guided Medicare Solutions. that is when I started doing everything over the phone. And it was at first a slow learning process. I didn't know how to. I didn't know that I even could, and I had to do a lot of research to make sure that I was doing it correctly without getting into compliance issues. And another big reason for me is that I was uncomfortable with doing it over the phone because just not knowing how to and not knowing whether it was compliant and all the same reasons that I didn't know that I could. And so once I got past all that, which was pretty quick, you quickly find out that you can be a little bit even more efficient doing it over the phone and remotely. For me, I always did my own and still do my own marketing. And so as far as marketing goes, it's for me, it's a little bit more efficient to be remote. But you don't have to, it's just a little bit easier that way. And so the big thing is just getting past these reasons why you aren't doing it already. And then, it'll get easier and easier. So practice, just like anything else, makes perfect. As I alluded to before, there are some things that you need to be successful. The systems and technology, building trust remotely is huge. Turning leads into clients, like most of us already know how to do, it is a little bit different over the phone. You have to try a little bit harder sometimes. And the enrollment methods you can use to do that, and some of the lead generation, and a lot of people think that the lead generation has to be different and it has to be different leads, but it should work with all the same leads and lead generation that you've been doing up until now. So the main purposes of this webinar for me is to show you that you can absolutely sell over the phone, and you can be very successful doing so. Once you get past the uncomfortableness or the thought that you could only meet in person, which is what I used to think, you start becoming more efficient, and you don't have to drive to and from appointments, and the time that it takes to enroll people is much lower. So that really helps. And so we'll get over to the next slide here. And this is all stuff that we could spend all day on, going through all these sections, but we're going to go a little bit brief on some of these, and if you do have any questions or need more elaborate details, we can do that during the Q&A at the end. So first here, when you're selling over the phone, there's some systems and technology that aren't necessarily required, but will help you become more efficient. And since selling over the phone is a little bit tougher for people to to see you, sometimes the best way to get around that is to be more efficient and talk to more people. So what will help you with that are one big thing that'll help you with that is a CRM, a client or customer relationship management system. If you aren't already using one, then you probably should be. This will help you make sure that you are working your customers more efficiently, or your prospects and leads more efficiently, so that you aren't contacting one person and then you forget about them and you never contact them again. A lot of the people, they're being called multiple times a day, and so for you, you'll want to make sure and contact them multiple times as well, to make sure that you get someone that's going to answer the phone. So that's the biggest thing when you're selling over the phone, is making sure people are going to answer when you call. When I used to sell face-to-face, all of my notes from years of selling were on paper tablets and by memory, and keeping your notes and lead and customer status information on paper makes it really hard to go back and see what's going on. And I just never worried about a CRM. I had a spreadsheet with all my clients on it, and that was it. And I just tried to sell more and more without just going back and helping the people that I've already talked to. So a good CRM would include tools to improve the way that you work your leads. Some examples of those things that will help are email drip marketing, text messaging, where you can set up automatic text messages to the leads and clients, and automated workflows and tasks to save money and time, especially not having to send mailers and letters for everything. It is a good idea to start utilizing email and text messaging when you can. A lot of people think that that seniors don't do a lot of that, but more and more are. And in my experience, there are very few that don't have at least text message access, let alone email access. So for me, with the CRM I use, I'm just going to mention it here. You can use any CRM and it'll help you tenfold. So the one I use though is Radius Bob. That helps for many different things. They have a dialer, VoIP, and text message marketing, email marketing, all kinds of things that help me. But I have a specific workflow set up where my leads that I haven't been able to get in contact to are added to and removed from a call queue about 9 times over a month period until I get a hold of them, or it goes to gets to 9 attempts, in which point it's just removed from the queue for the last time. And so being able to have it automated so that I don't have to go back and try to figure out who I need to call and how many times I've tried to contact them, that really helps. But you'll want to make sure and try to contact these people more than just once or twice, because a lot of times they can't answer, or sometimes they'll blow you off or just forget about the appointment or whatever is going on. So you just want to keep trying. There's a lot of the sales that I make that are one call closes, but it took a lot of calls to get to that one call. So it'll be beneficial for you to do that. You can, as far as using phones or your phone system, you can use a cell phone or a desk phone to dial calls, but usually only if your volume of leads and clients are low. If not, then your sales will suffer because you're not able to efficiently dial and go through all the leads that you need to be, because the way that this works, the more people you talk to, the more people you sell, of course. So the way that it really helps is if you're truly making the shift into selling remotely, it is the best thing to do is to maybe start making calls from your computer and not have to physically dial each and every phone number. There are many VoIP, voice over internet protocol, soft phone vendors out there, and you don't always have to spend a ton of money on those. They're very inexpensive options that are available. Some of them are super inexpensive. Google is one of them. You can use the Google number and that's free. Skype is very inexpensive. So if you use those, then it'll be very inexpensive and you don't have to use an 800 number. I use an 800 number so that my incoming calls, usually in my current customer calls, I use the 800 number for. I use my CRM and my soft phone for using outbound calls because it'll match the caller ID of the person that I'm talking to, and I own a phone number for every state that I deal with. So for me, it works better that way, but you don't have to, especially if you're just marketing in one state. Then you can just use your your local number, and people are more apt to answer local phone numbers, even if that number is outside of their area. Or even out of their state. They're just less likely to answer an 800 number than a local phone number. So, yeah, you'll want to use, if you can, use your computer to make the most of your calling. It'll be much easier for you especially if they have a click to call feature, where you just click on the number and it dials the person that you want to talk to instead of having to manually enter in all the numbers. Then a good headset is a good idea to invest in, so that when you're on the phone with people, that you're not getting a lot of background noise when you're talking. So I can go into more details on those types of equipment if we need to later. Initially, when I started selling over the phone, the sources I was learning from were very strong about the need of screen sharing, absolutely doing that on every appointment. I, however, have found it took a short time to find that the majority of my appointments and my leads that I was working with didn't need to be done by screen share. So especially now, most people assume that this will be done mostly over the phone and not face to face or by screen share, and a lot of people just can't do it by screen share. So those are a few exceptions. Actually, there are a few exceptions that I've had that have requested that I do a screen share, where I've suggested a screen share if I felt that it would be easier for them, or they would be more comfortable seeing it, seeing what we're going over. And obviously, it can be easier for someone when they can see the material. However, it's not absolutely needed. It's a good idea to have that in your back pocket, a screen share program available for you to use if someone needs to go that route, but don't expect to have to use it all the time. A lot of people, like I said, don't want to deal with it, or just not that tech savvy. So have it as an option, but don't force it, and don't rely on it. So one of the most important things that we'll go over today is building trust remotely. This is a lot of the same things that you would do in person, but when you're doing it over the phone, it's a little bit more important to focus on these things. So there are other ways to build trust, and these are going to be a few of them. One of the best and most important things you can do is to build, in order to build trust over the phone, is to spend more time with the customer than some people have in the past, and don't rush them. You'll want to let them talk and talk and talk if they want to. The more that they talk, and the more that more information they're just giving to you, or talking about their family, their kids, the weather, whatever, the more they will trust you. They love a person they can talk to. One thing they don't like is, for the most part, is a fast talker just trying to sell them something, and they can sense that that's what you're trying to do if you're just spouting off to them without letting them talk or getting any information from them. Sometimes you may not be in the mood to chit chat, but you'll want to change that quickly so that you can just build that just over the phone. It doesn't take much. The biggest thing is, like I said, just to let them talk. They get calls all the time from other agents and telemarketers that are high pressure and use scare tactics to try to get them to spend more money. But if you listen, and if you pay attention and educate them, you'll stand out as the person that actually wants to help them, and not just try to sell them. And you'll want to highlight the things that make you different from some others. Like I said, a lot of the people are being called by telemarketers, and agents that they'll only talk to one time. So for you, you'll want to highlight that you are going to be the person to stick with them and help them in the future. And that'll be a difference. And that's one of the things that have brought a lot of customers to me, is that the fact that we just keep up with them and make sure that every year we take care of them and figure out what is best for their needs going forward. They will trust you much more than the fast talkers, even if you are naturally a fast talker. If you follow their flow and educate them and base your recommendation on their needs that they've alluded to along the way, then you'll be the one that they want to go with to get their insurance from. I get the calls all the time from people that sign up for a plan because they were just pushed into it and had no more understanding about Medicare or their options than they did before that person sold them that plan. Since they can't see you in person, you should make it easy for them to find you online, and give them as much information about yourself as you can, so that they can find you and verify that you are a real person and maybe trying to help them out. So I strongly recommend that you build a website. There's a lot of free or low-cost website providers out there where you can just build something quick and easy. You'll want to have a Facebook page, maybe a YouTube channel with a couple videos about yourself and Medicare and other things that might pertain to them. And maybe even a LinkedIn profile. I have had a few customers find me on LinkedIn, and some of them that have called because they found me on LinkedIn and verified that I was a real guy. And so all of these things will help you build trust, especially for people that are not really trustworthy of calling, and that's more and more these days, because they're being scammed a lot, especially with Medicare and the COVID-19 and people asking for their Medicare numbers and all the normal social security scams. They want to sometimes know who they're talking to before they give up too much information. Most of the people I talk to have found me online one way or another, and when they find you online, they already trust you enough to call you, so you're halfway to the sale before they even call. I've had others ask about me and who I am, and I can always point them to my website or my social media accounts to make them feel better about that. And then I always send them an email with all my information as well, with a short document I've created to give them an introduction to who I am and what I do. So all those things will really help make sure that they trust you and ensure that they go with you when you go over the options. And one of the things that you'll want to make sure that you do that is not on here is always don't hesitate to talk about options that you are not able to help them with, meaning that if you don't have if they are on a plan or looking at a plan that you don't represent, don't hesitate to give them information about that plan or compare options. A lot of people can sense it if you're trying to avoid what they're talking about just because you want to sell the product that you represent. If you just give them as much information as possible, they'll trust you a little bit better. And a lot of times, sometimes they will go with you if there are two close options, but they trust you more than the other guy, then they'll go with that option that maybe you represent over the one that you don't. So it really helps that way. Okay, so turning leads into customers. I hope a lot of us already know how to do that and have done it in the past. But basically, the way that this works is you'll want to have a process in place to prospect leads and clients. That's obvious. But a lot of people don't have a specific process. If you don't have a process, it's easy to get distracted and not work efficiently. So when you are generating leads, it's very important to be consistent. If you're generating your own leads, or paying for leads especially, it's very important to be consistent to keep the flow of leads. A lot of people will spend a bunch of money on leads, and then they'll dry up, and then you'll have to keep spending money again and again and again to replenish those. So if you're more consistent so they don't dry up, then you don't have those dry spots where you don't have the sales. And for me, when I go too long without a sale, I get discouraged and a little burnt out. So I have to keep it for myself consistent so that I'm always energized and ready to help the next person that calls. When you're working the leads, the initial contact, you'll want to make initial contact, of course. You can call, text, email, as long as you have the permission to contact, of course. Then most seniors don't answer the phone. I alluded to this earlier. Most seniors don't answer the phone the first time. It's important that you keep calling. I've called some people sometimes 20 times to get a hold of them, even after the first contact, because they, for whatever reason, they'll blow you off, or they don't expect a call back from the same person, especially with all the telemarketing and things going on now. So if you're the one that reaches out to them and follows up, then you're the one that's typically that they're going to go with. And a lot of them, they are one call closes. So once you do get a hold of them, then it can be a done deal from there. If you have the ability to make it a one call close and do your appointment when you call that person, that'll make it easier to sell them at that time. It's much harder over the phone when you're setting appointments for yourself and you have to go back later and call them at a later date and at that appointment time, because a lot of them, like I said, they'll either blow you off or just not answer the phone or whatever. They forget that you even had an appointment. When appointments are set over the phone, it's much easier for them to bow out, because when you had appointments set at the home, then it's much harder for them to say that they weren't available. They have to actually leave the house or just not answer the door, which is really awkward sometimes. But when over the phone, it's easier for them because they can just not answer if they don't want to. And so if you're the one that's following up with them and calling them again to follow up after that appointment, after maybe they blew you off or just didn't remember that they had the appointment, then they'll recognize that. And a lot of times that helps make the sale, because a lot of people are just called one time by a telemarketer or an agent and never follow up again, even if the person needs more information or just wanted to think about the plan options. And sometimes if you catch them at the right time, they might already have an option that they want to go with, but the person that they talked to before isn't answering their phone. So if you're the person that they end up talking to, then it can really help. So you want to make sure and build a pipeline and keep working it. Many seniors are not retiring at 65 anymore, so you'll want to still spend time with these potential customers and follow up consistently. So some examples of that are when a person is not planning on retiring for a couple of years, it's a good idea to give them all the information that you can still about Medicare and the plan options that are available to them. They'll really remember that. And I always send a letter out to them in these situations. I also have an automated greeting card system that will send them cards every 6 months to keep up with them until they do retire. but that one's not required. It's just a little bit extra. I have automated my CRM, allows me to automate a workflow that will send automated text messages and emails out to them every 3 to 6 months to keep up with them and hopefully catch them at the right time when they are finally deciding to retire. And that's a big example, is that if you give them enough information and if you keep up with them, then you're potentially increasing your chances of getting that sale much more than any other person, because most people don't want to talk to a person that's not retiring and not going on Medicare at this time, and so they know when a person is actually trying to get them the information. Even after you make the sale, you still want to keep following up with them. I have, again, automated workflows to send out emails and text messages, keeping up with customers, on birthdays and holidays, and just reaching out to them to see how they're doing. And they take note of that, and that helps push referrals in our direction. So that's a really big thing too, that takes no time at all. I don't have to do anything but hit a button and it'll set them up on these automated workflows to keep those going out. So that really helps. As far as when you're doing your presentation over the phone, sorry if this is corny, but I made it up the other day. you want to feed them, F-E-E-D. The first thing is follow the F here, follow their flow, and do not ask for any of their information, such as personal information like Medicare number, date of birth, any of that kind of stuff at the beginning of your presentation, and just actively listen. Some people want to get straight to the point and want this over with, and some people want to chit chat. So you got to follow what they want, and just kind of listen for those cues that would tell you that they want it quick or just want to take a while to go over the information. And so the next one is the E on feed, that's educate. You want to teach them about Medicare and tailor it to what they've told you, and make sure to keep it simple. In this phase, you don't want to give them every single coinsurance and detail about Medicare, copays, and you don't want to get too detailed. You want to give them brief overview of what they're going to deal with Medicare, but don't start tailoring it to their needs until a little bit later. And so the next part is explain. You want to explain the types of options that they have in general. So when I'm talking to someone, I'll depending on the permission to contact and the scope of appointment, all that fun stuff, compliance-wise, as long as it's compliant, you talk to them about the options that they have in general, meaning that I go over very generally what a Medicare Advantage plan is, and very generally what a Medicare Supplement plan is, and Part D, and kind of give them a quick idea of what they could deal with those different options, without going into specific detail yet, because we want to kind of get them leaning in one direction or the other, and they'll start asking you questions to help push you into one direction or another. And so at this time, you'll start to want to go over and discover. You'll want to help them define specifically what their needs are, and tailor an option to those specific needs. And so a lot of them, when you're talking to them, they'll allude to things that kind of tell you that they'd rather have a supplement plan or rather have an advantage plan, and you can start to kind of give them more information on what the restrictions are, what the highlights are in each situation or each plan option. and you don't have to get into specific details on specific plans yet. You still kind of want to keep it general so that you're not overloading them with too many numbers. If you're giving people just a bunch of numbers, it's often that their mind will go blank, and they'll be quiet, and you won't hear from them as much. So these things will really help. Then after you kind of feed them the information, kind of what I was getting to about the FEED is feeding them the information and making sure to give them all the information and educate them before asking them for a sale or trying to push them in one direction or another, because that is part of building that trust, is not being too high pressure and just giving before you're taking. And so after that, you can continue with the plan specific presentation, the compliant way that they want you to do that. Then always tie back to them along the way. So meaning that for you to just highlight the things that may be specifically important to them. By this time they've told you about things that they need and that they want and had questions about certain benefits. And at this time you can start to highlight those benefits and tell them why it might help them. Oftentimes it helps to give them some of those highlights before you start giving them the higher costs of Medicare Advantage hospital stays and things like that, or the high cost of a supplement plan monthly. So you just always want to give them those highlights before specifically getting into detail about things that they may not like, of course. So you'll want to double and triple check that they've understood the information that you're giving them. A lot of them will be, you get sometimes two types of people. Some of them will be very quiet the whole way through, and you don't know what they want or even if they want to be on the phone. And some will surprise you at the end. They'll just say, yeah, this is the way I want to go. And you think that you were losing them, but you'll want to just to try to avoid that quiet time. It's a good idea to just check back and make sure that they understand what you're talking about as you go, and that'll help you build the trust too, so that you're just not talking at them, you're kind of talking to them. And if they bring up other situations that might not pertain exactly to what you're talking about, just feel free to talk to them about those things too. Like I said earlier, let them talk and spend more time with them. That way they trust you more and you're the person they go with. From there, you move on to the enrollment methods that are available for them. Of course, it's very important not to rush them into anything. If you've done this correctly, they won't feel rushed, and they'll just go with whatever you are proposing, and just help them as much as possible, even if it takes time. So no matter which enrollment method you choose, whether it's by paper, online, by email, or just telephonic, you just want to make sure and help them through that as much as possible, because that'll save you time in the future having to go back and follow up with them because they couldn't get an electronic signature done or whatever it is. It just really helps to, at that time, take the time to make sure that they get it all done and they're comfortable with it. The different enrollment methods that you have, of course, available to you, most of you know these, I hope. You have e-signature, electronic signature by email. These, of course, are sent to customers by email. Sometimes these take some time and hand-holding to complete. just because some people are not as tech savvy as we are, of course. And so when you're helping someone, that's what I meant by taking the time to make sure it gets done. I typically don't leave it up to them to go back to an email later to sign it. I usually kind of suggest that I am on the line when they go through those electronic signatures, so I can help them through it and make sure that they don't have too much trouble. Sometimes I've taken up to an hour, or a couple times I had a 2-hour stint where it was just trying to get the electronic signature done. It was towards the end of the month. We couldn't mail anything out for them to start the next day. And you know, sometimes those take some time, but it's worth it for you because for one, you'll get the sale and you don't have to keep following up with them. Then it's worth it for them as well if they need the coverage absolutely to start the next couple days or so. More and more carriers with these with methods to pre-fill the entire application. Jameson will probably talk about this a little bit later, but there are many carriers like United Healthcare, Humana, and others now that are allowing with their proprietary enrollment online enrollment methods where we can pre-fill the application and send it to them by email for electronic signature, and that way they only have to do the electronic signature. I don't remember the last time I sent somebody a link for them to fill out their application on their own if I wasn't already on the phone with them to help them enter that information. You just want to make it easy as possible for them. Telephonic enrollment methods. More and more carriers, of course, now have made the ability to enroll over the phone much easier. Just totally over the phone, no physical signature required. This is by far it can take longer because you have to go through a specific script in most cases, Medicare approved script. So it can take longer, but there's no follow-up. You don't have to spend time going through emails, and it's great for those that don't even have email or internet because it just gets done and you don't have to worry about it later. And then you can follow up with them afterwards to let them know the status of their application and everything. So that recently has been awesome, having the ability to do those. It just takes a little bit more time because of the script that you have to follow and that kind of thing. You can always still send applications by mail. I do this a lot still for people that well, up until the last couple of months, we've switched more over to telephonic and e-signature options because more and more people are adapting to that. But in the past, I've done a lot of applications by mail. And for the most part, it's because they can't do e-signature for some reason, or if there's no telephonic signature available, or if they're just not comfortable with doing the electronic signature, even if they have email. So we still do applications by mail, but you have to pay for shipping and all that fun stuff. So it's an option. It's just not going to be as quick and easy as the telephonic or e-signatures, and you don't always get those applications back. So you'll always have to make sure to follow up with those people after you've sent them the application by mail. Then oftentimes when they get it, it's like doing the sales presentation all over again because they want to go over all that information again. So it takes more time. Good for them because they want to understand, but a lot of times that's what happens. And you'd never know. One of the biggest problems is you never know what happens between the time you've sent that application and when they got it. And in just a few days, they get calls probably 10 times a day from other agents and telemarketers, and in that time they can be sold even the plan that you were helping them with. And I've had that happen where they called me to just let me know that somebody had helped them within that time frame. And so you'll want to make sure and follow up with them if you do end up sending the application by mail. Then the last enrollment method, which we don't do a whole lot, or I don't do a whole lot here, is self-enrolls, where you send out your personal URL. It's nice for some people that just, they know what they want, and they'll do it. If they're tech savvy enough, they'll just do it and enter their own application in. That can work for some of your current clients that are just renewing for the following year, and you've told them what plan to get, and they're okay with saving time and everything, just doing that on their own, and it saves you a little bit of time. But for the most part, for new enrollees, one of the other methods will be a little bit better for you, because the self-enroll just takes too much of their own initiative and sometimes that can be a problem. So that is the last one that you'd want to use for new customers, in my experience anyways. We'll talk a little bit, like I said, about lead generation here. No matter what type of lead that you, as far as I can tell anyways, no matter what type of lead that you have worked in the past before the COVID-19 stuff and before telephone sales, before you were introduced to that, they'll all work the same over the phone. You can still, of course, referrals are always the best leads to get, because they already know you. They don't know you, but they trust you a little bit because their friend or family member, whoever it is, have given them your information, and probably talked you up a little bit. And so those are always the best, of course. Direct mail is very easy to be consistent, and it still works, and will continue to work probably even more and more as big companies continue to pound Medicare beneficiaries with online marketing and telemarketing. Direct mail is also low cost and easy to keep the consistent flow of leads. You can just set yourself up with, not automated, but you just when you just keep purchasing these leads and keep the flow without letting them dry up. That'll be the best for you if you're used to direct mail. But you can really use any of these options that you feel comfortable with. Just make sure and try new ones if you think it might help. Telemarketing can be great for volume and to talking to the most people, but they are already being called multiple times a day. So it's not easy sometimes to get people that want to talk to you just by telemarketing. If you're doing it on your own telemarketing can be very inexpensive. But there are a few sources out there where you can get regular telemarketed leads that don't have to be crazy expensive. And there are live transfer leads, which can be expensive, but sometimes better quality. So there are already qualifying people over the phone and sending them to you, transferring them to you for you to sell them. And so, but those are very expensive. Internet and social media leads can be great, especially if you can learn to do it yourself. There are ways to do this for free. For instance, setting up a YouTube page and putting out videos to bring leads in. People will find you on YouTube. Until you do this and experience it on your own, you have no idea how many people are using YouTube and Google and all the other platforms to find their information, or they're not looking for it sometimes, and it just pops up. And so it can be awesome, especially if you're putting out educational videos and they're calling because they got the best information from you. And you can use those platforms and tie it into Facebook. And when people find you and call you, many already trust you because they've seen you online and they've learned from you already before they even call. And these can be as good as sometimes or better than referrals because you've given them so much information already that they want to work with you. The free one-off leads from YouTube and Facebook or whatever else you're using usually won't be enough to keep a consistent flow of leads. So you can always try paid online and social media leads if you wanted to, but if you can figure out how to run ads yourself on Google or YouTube or Facebook, they can be much less expensive for you, therefore increasing your return on investment. And so that's a lot of what I do is my own internet and social media leads. And it's taken a lot of money and a lot of time to figure out some of the things that work. But once you do figure it out and start getting the leads, they can pay off very well. So that is the main part of the presentation I wanted to go over. But I didn't add this in it, but I wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of the process once I have somebody on the phone and go through kind of how a presentation would look like once I get them on the phone. So when somebody calls me or I call them and they are, of course, if they're willing to talk or listen at least, then I kind of just start off by very generally, oftentimes I would say, do you know much about Medicare and how the plan options work? Or, do you have any specific questions to start before I go through some of that? And they would, very often they'll have some questions to start you off with, and they'll ask, do I need Medicare Part B if I'm on Medicaid, or do I need this, do I need that, what is this, what is that? And you can start by going over those things, and then from there I just give them a brief overview of how Medicare works. I keep it very simple while still keeping it compliant and giving the information that they should have, but I will tell them, this is how Medicare Part A works. Part A is your inpatient hospital insurance portion. Medicare Part B is your medical insurance portion of Medicare. There's the Part A deductible, and very, very basically, Medicare covers 80%. You pay 20% if you don't have a Medicare supplement plan or Medicare Advantage plan to help limit these out-of-pocket costs. And then you ask them, you want to keep tying back to them and asking them, do you know much about these options or anything about this yet? And they'll tell you what they know usually, and then you kind of, I usually give them a brief overview of what a Medicare supplement plan is first, because those are straightforward and easy to explain. And then I would tell them the Medicare Advantage plan, this is how those work, and that takes a little bit longer to explain exactly what those are and how they work. It's a little bit harder to understand sometimes. So very general, just keep it very simple. From there, I would typically ask them, sometimes I already know which way that they're going to flow based on what they've told me already, but I would ask them, based on that information, are you leaning this way towards a Medicare Advantage plan or this way towards a Medicare supplement plan? You want to make sure that they know about all their options. Even if you think they're going to go one way or the other already, you want to make sure that they at least know about the other option, because I get a lot of calls from people that were sold a plan. It was just pushed down their throat, and the person didn't tell them about the other options that were available to them. And so when I did, they were very happy about that. And of course, it turns into a sale. And so you don't want that to happen to you, where you didn't give them enough information and they went off and switched their plan to go with someone else because that that made it enticing for them. Sometimes it's not even the better route for them to go, but that wasn't explained to them in your presentation. So you want to make sure and very generally go over each route that they can go with Medicare. And then from there, ask them, which way they are leaning. Then from there, you can start to get into specific plan information, get all their prescription drugs, their doctors, and everything like that to help figure out what plan options might be best for them. And I always tell them this is what we're looking for. We want to make sure that you have a plan. If it's an Advantage plan that they go with, they want to make sure that they have a plan where they don't have to change doctors unless they don't care, or they don't have to change medications, or we just want to tie it back to them and make it easy as possible. We want to, and I always tell them that we want to make sure that it's the plan that's going to give them the lowest co-pays, and just feed this information to them along the way, so that they trust you a little bit more. Sometimes it just takes you telling them or giving them more information than somebody else would to end up with the sale. And a big part of that is just so that you're not getting a ton of calls from them afterwards asking you, why didn't you tell them about this? Or why didn't I heard about this option? Why didn't you tell me about that? Or can you tell me about it now? It'll save you a lot of time just to get it over with in the presentation and go over everything that you need to. And so once you get up to that point where you've figured out what plan option is best for them, you kind of go over that presentation of that specific plan, of course, and tie everything back to them. Then you present the enrollment methods. Usually by this time I would know what they're capable of or what they would like to do as far as the enrollment method goes. For most people, I like to do electronic signature by email, where I'm on the phone while they take care of the electronic signature. That's the easiest way and quickest way to do it for a lot of people that can handle email and the internet and everything. And then if they just don't deal with email at all, that's when I pitch to them if the carrier has a telephonic enrollment option, that's when I would tell them we can just do it over the phone. We don't need to deal with any email or internet. And if they, for some reason, just didn't want to do that, or just didn't have the time right now, or didn't think that they had enough information, sometimes they just want to have it on paper before they do anything. And in that case, we would send it out by mail and have them sign and send it back that way. And so, like I said before, if you did that, you want to make sure and follow up. I usually follow up when they should have gotten the mailing. I send it out by priority mail. They should get it within 3 days. I call them on that third day and make sure that they got it and understand it. And then once they do sign and send it back, whether it's or enroll over the phone, I follow up with them with a couple emails and text messages just saying that I'm going to stick with them as their agent, and I always point them to ask them to review my Facebook or Google or what have you online. And a lot of this is just to make myself real for them, because they want to feel comfortable and feel safe that you're going to stick with them and help them as their agent. And if they can see all that, then that'll really help solidify it so that they don't just go with someone else. Sometimes they'll get sold, within the next few days from somebody else, or a lot of times it's not the most loyal situation, client to agent. And so making yourself a real person and easy to find, and keeping up with them will really help keep those customers. And that's the main thing that we're in business for now, is to build those renewals and residual income. So taking care of your customers, your current clients, or sometimes even it's even more important to take care of them and make sure they're taken care of so that you're not losing those along the way. Then you have less to replace. So that's kind of how my presentation goes, and it's almost the same for every single person, the same flow. I always let them talk and everything in between. It can take a while, of course, but it's worth it, especially if you get it all done in that call and you don't have to worry about it later. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as well. Right now, that's pretty much the end of my presentation here. So I'll pass it back to Jameson.
Devin, wow, that was a lot of information, a lot of really good stuff. Thank you very much for presenting. I noticed a couple of things, and we've got a number of questions that we're going to answer here in just a moment here. Now is a great time for you to type questions into the Q&A box and we can get those answered, as well as raise your hand, and Yadira will be unmuting you when I give her the nod in order to ask those questions live. So just a couple of things that I noted really fast. Number one, it seems like a lot of the same principles to telesales are the same as field sales. And so it comes down to you're still building client trust, you're still educating them on the right product, doing needs analysis to identify what's really important to them, and then educating them on the products that fit those needs, and then getting them enrolled. Most of it comes down to what is our comfort level in working with somebody over the phone and getting over kind of our own fears of chatting with somebody remotely. Know that if you are going to be using a screen share program and you're going over health information with somebody, because oftentimes you're also using the voice through that screen share program, make sure it is a HIPAA compliant screen share program. We sent out an email a month or so ago recommending that people check out the G Suite from Google. You can easily execute a business associate agreement with G Suite so that it is HIPAA compliant, and it gives you access to Google Meet along with HIPAA compliant email and a number of other features. So that's a fairly low cost. I want to say it's something like $10 a month. It's pretty cheap. So definitely check that out. I did really like the note that you put in here about don't ask for personal information up front. When you ask for personal information up front, you instantly lose credibility and you lose trust with that person. Instead, give to them and find out the information that you need in order to recommend products and things like that. But there's no reason to ask for a Medicare number or anything along those lines until you actually get to the point of trust having already been built. So I will do a very, very quick kind of preview on some technology that will allow you to do all of this over the phone. Guided Medicare Solutions is in the process right now of launching our My Guided platform, which is going to allow you to do electronic enrollments for most of your carriers remotely through a single link. For those on the agency RM side, that should be launched here within the next, I want to say, 30 days. For those on the original Guided Medicare side, that's already being launched to you right now. So definitely use it. It will, as of the new 2021 version, which just launches on 10/1, it will allow you to pre-fill applications and send those to clients for signature, both through their computer as well as through text message on their cell phone. So it allows you to work with clients in a much more efficient manner. It's also going to let you store drug lists and look up drugs and do quotes, things like that, which will be very, very helpful. So let's get into the Q&A right now. I'm going to read some of these questions that are out there. We're going to quickly answer those because we're already way over our time limit, but this has been so great that I'm okay with that. Hopefully y'all can stick around. Devin, somebody's asking, what about auto dialer call blockers? Do you use anything to handle that?
I actually haven't. I always, if I do have if I'm going to purchase a phone number, I always make sure I don't actually use an auto dialer because of those situations. But there are some dialers that are, if you're looking at auto dialers or things of that nature, it's a good idea to look at predictive dialers. A lot of times those don't get flagged as easily as an auto dialer would, and they honestly are more compliant as far as the FTC rules or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then I don't have a lot of problem with that because I usually purchase the number that I'm using as far as the caller ID goes, and I don't typically overdo it, and so just following basic FTC guidelines and things should avoid that, and then owning the phone number will help. And I always run the phone number through just through Google and stuff like that to make sure that they're not flagged already for spam calls.
So the auto dialer kind of process that Devin mentioned earlier is actually utilizing a CRM system that allows you to click on the phone number and have it automatically dial through your VoIP system, as opposed to having to manually type it in each time. So it saves you, little tiny savings of a second or two add up over a lot of time. There's a question here about suggestions for VoIP and dialers. I think you actually already mentioned that. You mentioned Skype, you mentioned Google, both allow you to use VoIP. Mm-hmm. We've got what carriers that are you aware of that actually allow for telephonic enrollment, Devin?
So you've got any Centene carrier. So that would be Allwell, Centene, HealthNet, WellCare Now. Those are all available. Then you have Aetna, and these are all using the rate. The Ascend application rate program, where they make the client call in to a separate number through your Ascend application. So that's a little weird for them sometimes, but it works out. But Aetna, locally here in Washington, we have Regents that is also in the Ascend system, and you can do it with that. Aetna, Centene.
So true telephonic enrollment has a lot of regulations associated with CMS. There's call recording regulations. There's things have to be done in an inbound call. There's specific scripts that have to be used. So any carrier that's going to allow what we'll call a field agent to do a true telephonic enrollment, I think the only way to do that at this point is actually utilizing the Ascend program. And a number of the carriers out there have Ascend as their direct electronic enrollment system. We're building a system for you and have already built a system for you that's kind of a universal electronic enrollment, but it doesn't use the Ascend platform. So you'd have to log into the specific carrier site for that.
Humana is another good one, actually. Humana allows telephonic applications now, and it's automated. So you're not going through the script, but it's automated. It takes a little bit more time because you have to listen to a recording, but theirs is awesome because you don't have to rely on yourself to stay 100% compliant. You can leave that to the recording.
Great. How much detail do you go into about the PDPs as far as their individual prescriptions and copays?
As soon as we get to that point where I'm asking for their prescriptions, every single detail. You want to go over the copays, the deductible. You want to explain to them that the coverage gap or donut hole, even if you think it doesn't apply to them. That's one of the things that people get complaints on more often than not. So you really want to just go into detail on that and just let them know about those things. You don't have to. You always want to tell them you're going to be sent this information, so you don't need to write it all down or remember all of it. But I need to tell it to you to stay compliant, and you need to know by law. So.
And document everything, folks. Have a CRM system so you can document everything that you've told them. Make sure that you kind of have your own process written down and in place of what you are going to go over, so that if and when you get a compliance violation, you can defend yourself by showing all of the information, showing your process of here's what I go over 100% of the time. That will get you out of trouble faster than anything. So document. Are you collecting any information from clients prior to a phone call?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that one. Sorry.
We've got somebody asking, are you collecting any information from clients prior to the phone call? I guess so you can do research on which product may be the best fit prior to you getting on the phone with them.
Typically not, unless sometimes I'll get a referral that emailed me because they were given my email, and we'll go back and forth on email a little bit but for the most part, I start fresh on every single one of them, just because it would take you more time to go through and find those options for them and try to nail it down before, and then you get on the phone with them and it's totally opposite of what you were thinking. It would just take you more time to do that, unless you already know the person, or it's a current client of yours. I always try to get as much, AEP, I always try to get as much information as I can from current clients on any changes that they have before doing anything, and then I can look those up. But for new customers, I tend not to do that.
Great. Let's see here. What else is relevant to everyone here? Yadira, do we have anybody that has their hand up that maybe wants to chat live for a minute?
Yes, we have a couple. I'll start with Carol McClure.
Carol, I think you're live. Let's, what can we do for you?
Give me 1 second.
Oh,
okay, should be live now.
You're live.
I ended up typing my questions in.
Awesome, thank you. All right, who's next, Yadira?
1 second, let me go through the list. We have James, and I'm not sure how to say his last name. Sorry, James.
It's Yaragi. James Yaragi.
Yeah, it's Yaragi. So, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I did not hear anything about an SOA.
I was actually just going to mention that. So as far as the SOA goes, that's honestly has been always my biggest fear, not fear, but biggest concern is that it always drives me crazy is what I should say. The way that I handle that is once we, like I said, most people I explain generally what options that they have through Medicare. Once we get to like a specific option that we're looking at, then we take care of the SOA. When it's, and typically it gets a little bit tricky, especially if you already know that it's going to be a mailed application, that kind of thing. It gets hard to do an SOA type situation, especially if the plan you're talking about doesn't have their own recorded SOA system. So you can do it over the phone. It's hard for that. If you do it by text message using a send, that's really easy because they can just hurry up and get that text message and accept the SOA. But sometimes you end up sending in an SOA if it's by an application by mail, sending an SOA out to them with that application for them to sign and send back to try to stay as compliant as possible. But if you can do the electronic signature SOA either by email or text message at the time of the application, that's the best way to go. The other kind of weird thing is that the rules on that have loosened up a little bit as far as when you have to have the SOA done. It used to be, 2 days before, then up until recently, they wanted you to do it before, at the beginning of the appointment or right before. Now, a lot of carriers, even on their recorded SOAs, they ask you if you're doing it during the appointment. So it's a lot looser now and easier to take care of. But still very annoying, especially if you're just trying to help the customer. So. Did you have a specific question on that, or?
So before we do that, I'll just let you know, we do have 2 versions of SOAs that you can do electronically right now. One through the My HCRM platform, you have an electronic SOA available to you. The other is going to be through the new electronic enrollment platform, My Guided Medicare, that's being launched. It also has an electronic SOA that's even easier to complete that will be launched for the HCRM team soon. It already has been launched for the Guided team. Rules on SOAs are pretty gray, and so our recommendation is if you have the ability to get one and submit it with the application. If you don't and you're doing everything remotely and it was not a pre-scheduled appointment, then you're probably safe to avoid it. But we always recommend getting an SOA just to cover your own butt.
Jameson, did you say that if you're remote and it's difficult to get, that skip it?
What I said is that if you are remote and it's not a pre-scheduled appointment, There are a lot of carriers that don't consider that to be a required SOA meeting. So if you're sitting there and somebody calls you and you end up, during that call having a full conversation on product and then they want to enroll, that's not an SOA. That's not something that required an SOA over the phone. I recommend you get it anyway because every carrier is going to view the rules a little bit differently and they're not black and white. And so I recommend you get it anyway. But in that specific scenario, I could probably defend you and keep you out of compliance jail, but I'd rather not have to because it gets sticky.
Wow.
And as anybody here on the phone knows, as long as you remain compliant and you document stuff, I will go to the ends of the earth to defend you as long as you didn't mess with grandma.
I'll attest to that.
So my question continues regarding the SOA. It looks like, there's an educational portion to the telephone enrollment. And then if you're going to do it all in one, you start to move into recommendations and you begin to detail a particular plan. Now, at that moment of detailing, it used to be that was where the SOA was really necessary. And what I'm hearing is that maybe you can go ahead and detail a plan, and then at the moment of enrolling, we can do the SOA. Is that true?
That's what I've had some carriers tell me. The regulations state that you're supposed to do it ahead of time prior to actually getting into products and things along those lines.
Right.
I will just once again recommend if you have somebody and you can, before you get too deep into things, just do the SOA. If you're going through a lot of question and answer and it kind of naturally moves into some of the products and there's not a great place to jump into the SOA at that point, at the bare minimum, get it before you take the application. But it's a too gray of an area to give you a really solid answer, Jim.
Okay, so try to be as safe as possible.
Yes, sir. All right.
I did have another question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Different question regarding doctor's referrals. So if you're working remotely and you're in a different state, and I understand that that's kind of what Devin's doing, he's working different big cities, then Devin, this issue of making sure that the doctors are part of the network is often a challenge. How do you
Go ahead, sorry.
How do you handle that?
So you're right. And initially, I made it even more challenging on myself in my mind. You would think that when you're local, all the networks and who's in, who's out of plans. When you're not, you don't know much of that unless you are talking to people in that certain area for a while. But basically, I take everybody. I have fine-tuned my search abilities so that I'm able to quickly search for these doctors and medications and everything, the hospitals, whatever it is, very quickly. I don't know if. Well, one thing that I do utilize a lot that does help right now is through. I don't know how many of you can use this. Should I talk about senior market sales at all, Jameson? Their system.
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I don't think that that's going to be relevant here moving forward. So
yeah, because that was a problem. So there, up until there was a system that I was using that allowed me to look up many carriers and look up those physicians and hospitals in the network, and it would search it against many carriers, and that would help figure out quickly which plans we'd be looking at. It was definitely not 100% accurate, so I'd still have to go through specific plans and figure it out. But the main thing is that if they only have a few doctors, then you can usually pretty quickly figure out which plans that they accept. And then if they have many, sometimes I'll tell them I'll probably let them go for about 15, 20 minutes while I look all these up and see which plans that they take. And I always try to tell them that you just want to make sure that they know that you're helping them and typically they'll answer me the next time when I call them back in 15, 20 minutes. I had maybe 2 in the last 300 people that I talked to that just blew me off when I called back. But for the most part, they'll, as long as you're helping them figure it out, they'll answer.
And speaking of helping, what I wanted to ask you was about you can help them later. You said one of the things I offer my clients is that they can call me after the enrollment. But if you're in a different city, how do you help them with things like doctor referrals or billing issues, the kind of things that customers tend to call the local agents for?
So
go ahead.
There's not really a difference doing that locally versus remotely, Jim. Typically, when someone's selling through multiple states, they're going to focus primarily on the larger national carriers, not have all of the local carriers in network. And so it still just comes down to working with your FMO and working with the carrier service departments directly to help take care of that client. I'm going to actually move this on to one last question here. Because we've been going a very long time here and we have to close this out. If you have additional questions that you would like to get answered or your question did not get answered, please feel free to email info@agencyrm.com and I'll be happy to work with everybody to get your questions answered. There's the last one that I do want to answer though. It says, how do you contact a prospect to be in compliance without soliciting? And this is a very important thing to remember when working over the phone. If you are calling about Medicare Advantage or PDP, you cannot make an outbound phone call without permission. So your marketing that you do to generate leads needs to give you permission to contact that person. Now, if they're your client, you have permission to contact that person already. You can make cold calls on Medicare supplement leads. Okay, and if the client then brings up Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plans, you're then free to talk about those, but you cannot bring that up outside of a Medicare 101. So please be clear, the unsolicited contact rules are still alive and well, and that will get you in trouble if you are making outbound calls to people that you don't have permission to contact. So with that, folks, thank you very much for attending our webinar today. This has been the longest webinar that Agency RM has ever put on. This has been great. Devin, you are a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate your time today. Folks, if you have additional questions, please email us at info@agencyrm.com and we'd be happy to help you. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a fantastic day.